I want to tell you something I used to be embarrassed about back when I was in college. Every time I needed a new clothes, I didn't ask myself what I actually liked. I asked what would make people look at me and think I had it together. I was wearing what was trending, what everyone else was wearing, what said without me having to say anything. I belong here, I'm the right kind of person. I didn't even own a single thing that was just mine. That was just an expression of who I actually was. And the strange thing that I didn't even notice I was doing it. It felt like normal decision making. It felt like getting dressed. But now I wear what I actually like. Retro things, comfortable things, things that have nothing to do with what everyone else is wearing. And the difference between now and then, it's not confidence. It's not that I stopped caring what other people think. It's that I finally understood why I cared so much in the first place. And that single shift in awareness changed everything. In this series, we've been going layer by layer into why we get in our own way. And this one might be the most personal layer yet. It started before you were old enough to choose. Here is the first thing that I want you to understand. It wasn't a choice you made one morning. It was built into you, slowly, quietly, over years, by the people and environments that shaped you before you had any say in the matter. John Bowlby, a British psychiatrist who spent decades studying how human beings form emotional bonds, he developed something he called attachment theory, and his central finding was this. From the moment we're born, we're wired to seek approval from people closest to us, not because we're weak, but because we needed to. As children, approval meant safety. I am loved, I belong here, I'm protected. Disapproval meant something far more frightening, not just rejection, but the threat of being alone, of being without the people we literally could not survive without. He writes, the propensity to make strong emotional bonds to a particular individual is a basic component of human nature. So when you were young, you learned that being a certain way made the people around you happy, proud, and comfortable. You did more of that. And when you learned that being yourself, fully, loudly, and honestly yourself made the people around you unhappy or disapproving, you did less of that. Not because you were a people pleaser, but because you were a child, doing exactly what children do, adapting to survive. The problem is not that you learned that. The problem is that you never unlearned it. What social media did to an already existing wound. Now take everything we just talked about, the deep childhood wired need for approval and belonging, and hand it a smartphone. Mark Lowry, a social psychologist, developed something he called sociometer theory, and his argument was simple and devastating. Self-esteem is not actually an internal measure of your own worth. It's a meter, like a fuel gauge, that tracks how accepted and valued you feel by the people around you. When people approve of you, the meter goes up. And when people reject or ignore you, the meter drops. And the meter dropping doesn't just feel bad, it feels like a threat. Because evolutionarily, it was. Being rejected from the group once meant you couldn't survive alone. And your brain still responds to social rejection with the same alarm system it uses for physical danger. Now think about TikTok, Instagram, and every other platform has done with this information. They built an entire system around artificially moving that meter. Every like meter goes up. Every comment meter goes up. Every view, every share, every follow. Dopamine, approval, safety signal. And every post that gets ignored, every video that underperforms, every opinion that gets criticized, the meter drops. And your nervous system, which cannot tell the difference between online rejection and actual threat, responds accordingly. So you post what performs, so you say what gets approved. And then you become slowly, without realizing, a curated version of yourself that is optimized for other people's rejections. Just like the clothes in college, just dressed up as content. The relationship mirror. Now here's where it gets even more personal, because The need for approval doesn't just show up in what we wear or what we post online. It shows up in our relationships. It shapes them in ways that most of us never examined before. Amir Levin and Rachel Heller, in their book Attached, describe how our attachment style formed in childhood follows us into every adult relationship we ever have. If you grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where approval had to be earned, where you had to be a certain way to feel loved and safe, you likely develop something they call an anxious attachment style, which means in relationships, romantic, friendship, or even professional relationships, you're constantly scanning for signals. Are they happy with me? Did I say the wrong thing? Are they pulling away? Are they still approve of me? Brené Brown says, when we stop caring what people think, we lose our capacity for connection. When we care too much, we lose our capacity for authenticity. The middle ground is learning to be selective about whose opinions actually matter. Whose opinions actually matter. That line changed how I think about every relationship I have. Not stop caring entirely, but get intentional about who gets the kind of influence over how you see yourself. Because right now, if you're like most people, you're giving that power to everyone. The stranger online, the colleague who barely knows you, the person from school you haven't spoken to in years, but still somehow factor into every decision you make about yourself. You're not seeking approval, you're seeking yourself. Okay, this is the thing that I actually wanted to say, and this is what I have come to believe. And this is what the research quietly confirms. About every person who cares too much about what other people think, you're not seeking their approval, you're seeking yourself in their approval. Stay with me. When we don't have a clear, stable, internally grounded sense of who we actually are, we outsource that job to other people. And that translates to this. We use their reactions as mirror. If they approve, I must be okay. If they reject, something must be wrong. Their opinion becomes the only feedback that we trust about our own worth. In The Courage to be Disliked, one of the most quietly radical books I have ever read, puts it this way. The desire for recognition is the desire to confirm that you have value, but value cannot be confirmed by someone else. It can be only lived. Value cannot be confirmed by someone else. It can only be lived. Think about how much of your life has been spent trying to get someone else to confirm something that they were never capable of actually giving you. Not because they didn't love you, not because they didn't mean it when they said you were enough, but because the confirmation you were seeking could only ever come from inside. And here is the painful truth underneath all of this. Every time you sought validation, every time you edited yourself to get someone's approval, you were trying to feel real. You were trying to feel like you exist, like you matter, like you're seen. Those are not shallow needs. Those are the deepest human needs there are. The problem was never that you had them. The problem was where you were going to get them met. The cost of living for the audience. Barry Schwartz in The Paradox of Choice. He talks about something he calls the tyranny of other people's expectations. When we make decisions based on what other people will think, we don't just lose authenticity, we lose clarity. Because you can never fully satisfy an external audience. People's opinions change. What gets approved today gets criticized tomorrow. The standard keeps moving and you keep running. He writes, learning to choose is hard. Learning to choose well is harder. And learning to choose well in a world of unlimited possibilities is harder still, especially when so many of those possibilities belong to someone else's idea of who you should be. I think of that version of me standing in a store in college, not asking what I liked, but asking what would make people think I belonged. That person wasn't making a choice. That person was a performing one. And the exhausting thing about performing choices is that once you perform a choice, you have to keep performing forever. Because the moment you stop, the costume comes off. And if you've been wearing that costume long enough, you genuinely don't know what is underneath. That's the real cost of seeking approval. Not just that you lose other people's respect, but that you also lose access to your own. How you start taking yourself back. I'm not gonna tell you to stop caring what other people think because I think that's not realistic, and honestly, caring about the right people's opinions is part of being human and connected. What I want to offer instead is a different question. Not what will people think, but whose opinion actually matters here. And why do I trust them? Brene Brown calls this the 1 inch by 1 inch square. She says, write down the names of the people whose opinions you actually want to take into account. The people who know you fully, who love you honestly, who want good things for you without needing you to be smaller so they can feel bigger. If someone's name doesn't fit on that small square, their opinion doesn't get to live in your head rent free. And then start practicing.